Hey guys, tonight we travel back more than 2,000 years, to a cold plateau in northern Spain, where a small walled city dared to defy the most powerful empire on Earth. The year is 133 BCE, and you're standing outside the walls of Numantia, a cluster of stone houses on a hill above the Duero River, surrounded by pine forests and winter wind. You can smell wood smoke in the air, the faint tang of iron, and the fear that always comes before war. Below, a sea of Roman tents stretches for miles. Campfires glow like red stars on the plain. You probably won't survive this one, but then again, no one in Numantia really did. Before we dive in, take a deep breath. Subscribe if you love the kind of stories where the underdog doesn't just fight. They make history by refusing to kneel, and drop your location and local time in the comments, because tonight you're standing where resistance was born. The ground beneath your boots is frozen, but alive with memory. This is the land of the Celtiberians, fierce tribes who lived in the highlands of central Spain long before Rome ever dreamed of empire. They spoke an ancient tongue, worshipped gods of the mountains and rivers, and built stone fortresses where they farmed, hunted, and sang of heroes who never surrendered. Numantia was one of their greatest cities, not large, not rich, but proud and impossible to break. For decades, Rome had been trying to conquer these lands. After defeating Carthage in the Great Punic Wars, the Republic turned its legions westward, expecting an easy victory. What it found instead was a nightmare of endless guerrilla war. The Celtiberians fought with ambushes, traps, and hit-and-run attacks in forests the Romans barely understood. Roman discipline met Spanish defiance, and discipline kept losing. Numantia became the symbol of that defiance. When Rome crushed other cities, their survivors fled here. It became a sanctuary for rebels, deserters, dreamers, and the most dangerous thing of all, people who had nothing left to lose. Its walls were thick, its warriors relentless, its women as fierce as its men. From the city towers you can see the Roman camps like a chain of scars across the valley. They are building roads, cutting trees, draining swamps, turning the land itself into a weapon. Their red banners flutter like flames against the grey hills. Every day they send envoys demanding surrender. Every day the Numantines send them back, laughing. In Rome, senators call this stubborn city the ulcer of Spain. Every general who comes here promises glory. Most leave in disgrace. For 20 years, Numantia has held against the greatest military machine on earth. Its warriors, farmers turned fighters, carry iron swords and oval shields painted with spirals and suns. They fight barefoot on the rocks, howling their battle cries into the cold. To them, Rome is not destiny. It's an invader that can bleed like anyone else. Tonight you can hear the sound of drums inside the walls. Deep, slow, defiant. The people are preparing for war again. Mothers forge spearheads beside their husbands. Children carry water to the battlements. Priests light fires and chant to the gods of earth and sky. No one here believes in survival. They believe in honor. Down on the plain, the Roman legions are gathering. Their camps are grids of order, ditches, palisades, and perfect rows of tents. You can hear Latin commands cutting through the wind. The general in command swears this time will be different. This time Rome will prevail. But the soldiers whisper that Numantia is cursed. They've seen comrades vanish in ambushes, heard stories of entire patrols that never returned. The land itself seems to resist them. Somewhere among those fires, a young officer stares at the city walls and feels the same unease. He's seen Carthage fall, Greece submit, and Gaul bend the knee. But here, in the hills of Hispania, even victory feels haunted. For now, the night holds its breath. Two civilizations face each other in the frozen dark, one vast and methodical, the other small but unbreakable. Between them lies a truth the world will never forget. Sometimes the bravest stand is the one that ends in fire. The morning comes pale and sharp, the frost clinging to every branch. You wake to the sound of a horn echoing across the valley, the Roman signal for muster. Below Numantia the legions are already forming lines, their armour gleaming like ice beneath the sun. Standards ripple, officers shout orders, and somewhere in the centre the Roman eagle glints gold against the winter sky. This isn't the first army to come for Numantia. It's the 5th, maybe the 6th, depending on who's counting, and Rome keeps sending new ones because none of the others ever came home victorious. The Senate calls it pacification. The soldiers call it madness. Spain, they whisper, eats legions. It all started decades earlier, back when Rome thought it had conquered the world. After defeating Carthage in the Punic Wars, the Republic turned its gaze westward. Hispania, rich in silver, timber and grain, looked like easy pickings. The tribes there fought among themselves. They weren't united. Rome assumed it could conquer them as it had everyone else. One fortress, one treaty, one tax at a time. But Iberia wasn't like Greece or Gaul. Its tribes didn't care about empire. They cared about freedom and revenge. Every Roman promise turned out to be temporary. Every peace treaty was followed by new demands, new taxes, new insults, and every betrayal lit another fuse. By 154 BCE, the Celtiberians had risen in full revolt. Rome crushed some cities brutally, razing Sagida, enslaving its people, but every victory seemed to birth another rebellion. Guerrilla warfare bled the legions dry. Soldiers died of ambush, starvation, exhaustion. Commanders begged for reinforcements that never came. Numantia emerged as the heart of resistance. Perched on a hill above the Duero River, it commanded the highlands of Celtiberia. Its walls were modest, but its spirit was iron. From there, the rebels launched raids across the valleys, quick, brutal, vanishing before the Romans could respond. They became ghosts in their own land. By the time you arrive, or at least the time our story stands still, Rome is tired. The Republic's senators are arguing about cost, pride, and punishment. Finish Spain, they demand. Wipe Numantia off the map. But no one wants the command. It's like being handed a curse. Inside the Roman camp you can sense the weariness. The veterans complain that Spain is cursed ground, the mountains full of demons. The younger ones laugh nervously, but they've heard the stories of Roman cohorts routed by shepherds, of officers killed by women with knives hidden in their cloaks. Hispania doesn't just fight you, it humiliates you. Rome's commanders have come and gone like seasons. Some tried diplomacy, some tried terror. None succeeded. The worst was Gaius Hostilius Mancinus, who surrounded Numantia with 30,000 men and still managed to get trapped himself. The Numantines cut off his supplies, raided his foragers, and slaughtered his scouts. When he finally surrendered, it was on humiliating terms, swearing to leave Spain and never return. When the Senate in Rome heard about that treaty, they exploded with outrage. They declared it void. They stripped Mancinus of his office and, in a gesture both cruel and absurd, sent him back to Numantia, naked and bound, as a living offering. The Numantines looked at the trembling general and refused to take him. "You made the promise," they said. "Rome broke it. It's hard to know which side is nobler, the one that kills for pride or the one that dies for honour. But what's certain is this: Numantia became more than a city. It became a wound in the Roman psyche, the unconquerable hill, the reminder that not everything bends to empire. The latest general now encamped before its walls is wiser, or at least luckier. His name is Scipio Aemilianus, the same man who destroyed Carthage a decade earlier. The Senate calls him their best hope, the soldier who never loses. The soldiers call him something else, the man who brings endings. He studies the city through his spyglass from the ridge. Behind him, his engineers hammer stakes into the frozen ground, marking the lines of encirclement. There will be no reckless assaults this time. Scipio has seen what happened to Carthage. He knows what it takes to end a civilization. From the walls, the Numantines watch. They know this man's name. They know what he did to Africa's greatest city. But they also know something Scipio doesn't, that the people of Numantia are not waiting for rescue or mercy. They're waiting for the moment to choose how they die. The wind howls between the camps. Snow begins to fall, drifting over the plain like ash. You can almost feel history tightening. Two forces, one vast and methodical, one small and furious, circling each other for the last time. Rome will bring its legions, its discipline, its iron laws. Numantia will bring defiance, and only one will walk away from this frozen hill. The winter deepens over the plateau, and still the city of Numantia stands. Snow covers its rooftops, smoke curls from its chimneys, and the Roman army below grinds its teeth in frustration. You walk along the walls where the wind howls like a warning, carrying with it the faint sound of hammering from the valley. The Romans are building something massive. Again. Numantia's defenders are not soldiers in the Roman sense. They are farmers, herdsmen, hunters, men and women hardened by a lifetime on this harsh land. Their city is small, maybe 4,000 souls in total, but every one of them can fight. Children fetch stones for the slingers, women melt metal for spearheads. The blacksmiths work by torchlight, turning ploughshares into blades. The sound of hammers is the city's heartbeat. They have little in common with their conquerors. The Romans fight for glory, pay, and Rome's endless hunger for control. The Numantines fight for one thing only: freedom, the right to live on their own land under their own gods. Their code is older than law, and their courage doesn't come from training, it comes from fury. They know the Romans despise them, calling them barbary and barbarians. But from the ramparts, the Numantines watch the enemy's massive camps with grim amusement. The Romans, for all their order and machines, move like clumsy beasts. Their armour shines, their banners glitter, but they don't understand the hills, the cold, or the silence. By night, the defenders strike like ghosts. Small bands slip through gaps in the siege lines, setting fires to supply wagons, killing sentries in their sleep, and vanishing into the pines before dawn. They know the land better than any map ever could. One night, a Roman cohort wakes to find its entire food convoy destroyed, its guards killed with arrows in the dark. In the morning they find spears planted in the earth, painted red, as if mocking the blood they've lost. The soldiers whisper that the Numantines are demons, not men. Inside the Roman command tent, Scipio Aemilianus listens without emotion. He's heard this before, at Carthage, at Corinth, in every corner of empire. There are no demons, he says coldly, only men who haven't yet learned fear. Then he orders the soldiers to rebuild the supply lines, and the next time to guard them with double the men. The Romans adapt, as they always do. Scipio is no fool. He understands that victory in Spain is not about speed, but about starvation. Numantia can win battles, it cannot win hunger. And so, he begins his masterpiece. Not a siege, but an encirclement of perfection. 7 fortified camps connected by walls of earth and stone. A complete ring, 12 kilometers around the city. No one in or out, no messenger, no hunter, no hope. He stations cavalry on the river to block the water supply. He sends for engineers to build watchtowers and catapults. He orders every field burned, every road destroyed. From the walls of Numantia, the people watch the walls rise. Not theirs, but Rome's. The sight chills even the bravest among them. The Romans are building a prison around an entire city. Still, they mock them. When Roman soldiers march too close, Numantine archers shoot flaming arrows into their siege works. Once, a group of young warriors ride out under a white flag, only to throw a severed pig's head at the Roman camp before galloping back, laughing. For every act of arrogance from Rome, the city answers with defiance. But even defiance has limits. Food is running low. The hunting parties can no longer slip through the lines. The city's storehouses echo with emptiness. The winter snow that once protected them now locks them in. At night, fires burn on both sides, and the Romans' steady, disciplined glow. The Numantines scattered and small. Between them stretches the frozen plain, quiet except for the crackle of wood and the distant cry of wolves. Inside the city, a council gathers. The elders argue about surrender. The warriors refuse to hear it. One man rises, a blacksmith, his hands scarred and burned. "Let them surround us," he says. "They can cage the body, not the spirit." Another laughs bitterly. "Spirits don't eat." They all know what's coming. Famine, exhaustion, silence. But the city will not yield easily. In his tent, Scipio receives reports of yet another failed Roman assault. He doesn't punish the men. He simply says, "No more charges." The walls will fall to hunger, not hammers. His officers look uneasy. That could take months, one protests, or years. Scipio's reply is quiet and deadly. Then Rome will wait. We waited for Carthage. The war is no longer about victory, it's about annihilation. As the snow melts into mud and the rivers swell, the first signs appear: thin faces on the walls, smoke that smells faintly of burning leather, the silence of a city beginning to starve. Scipio stands at the edge of the Roman camp watching. They'll beg soon enough, he murmurs. They always do. But the men of Numantia have already made another choice. Not how to live, but how to die. The year is 133 BCE, and the siege has turned the land around Numantia into a circle of death. From the air, if you could see it from the eyes of a hawk, the Roman camps form a perfect chain around the hill, 7 fortresses linked by ramparts, trenches and palisades. In the centre, the city looks almost small now, a stone island surrounded by the machinery of an empire. Smoke from both sides mingles in the cold morning wind, carrying the smell of pine, sweat, and something darker: hunger. Inside the walls, the mood has changed. The jokes are fewer, the drums slower. People still move through the narrow streets, but their faces are drawn, their clothes hang loose. Food has become a ritual, shared in whispers, measured by crumbs. The once rich cellars hold little now but dust, dried herbs, and the bones of what used to be livestock. Families boil bark to thicken soup. They chew leather softened in water, but still they fight. Each dawn, small groups of Numantine warriors climb the walls to shoot arrows or hurl insults at the Romans below. "Come closer," they shout. "You conquerors of the starving." The Romans rarely answer. They don't need to. Scipio's order is silence. He tells his men that noise wastes discipline, and discipline is Rome's greatest weapon. The contrast between the two worlds could not be sharper. In the Roman camps, everything is geometry: rows of tents, precise schedules, guards posted in perfect intervals. Rations are counted, reports are filed, punishments delivered without anger or pity. Scipio walks among his soldiers daily, his armour plain, his face unreadable. He eats the same barley bread they do, drinks only water, sleeps on the ground. To them he is part general, part priest of order. To the Numantines he is death wearing patience. The Romans' control extends beyond the camps. They've built a dam on the Duero River, cutting off the waterway that once brought food and hope to the city. They've stationed cavalry in every valley. Any deer, rabbit or bird that strays too near is taken down before it can reach the walls. Slowly, the natural world itself becomes Rome's ally. But even starvation has its kind of courage. Inside the city, the Numantines cling to dignity. They hold council every evening in the main square, lighting torches against the wind. Their chieftain, Avarice, speaks quietly, his voice hoarse. "They think to make us slaves," he says. "Let them learn what freedom costs." The crowd murmurs approval, not loudly, but with the weight of people who mean it. The next morning, they prove it. At dawn, a band of young warriors, no more than 20, sneak through a narrow ravine where the Roman patrols have grown careless. They burst from the mist, swords flashing, and cut down several sentries before melting back into the rocks. For a moment, chaos ripples through the Roman lines. Scipio himself rides to restore order. When the skirmish ends, the field is littered with Roman shields and Numantine bodies. That night, Scipio orders the corpses left unburied in view of the city. He wants the message clear: no honour awaits the stubborn. From the walls, the people of Numantia watch in silence. A mother recognizes her son among the fallen. She doesn't weep. She simply lifts her torch high so that the Romans can see her face, and then she turns away. In the camp, the soldiers begin to talk of the city as cursed. The longer the siege lasts, the darker their dreams become. They whisper of strange cries from the hills, of ghostly figures walking the ramparts. Scipio ignores the superstition, but even he can feel it, the strange energy of a people too proud to die quietly. Weeks turn to months. The Roman ring grows tighter, the city quieter. Scipio starts cutting down trees to build siege towers, but not to attack, They're watchtowers, to make sure no one escapes. He's not fighting a war anymore. He's conducting an execution. In the heat of the day, the smell of rot drifts from the city. In the Roman camp, men cover their mouths with cloth, pretending it's just wind. Inside the walls, death has become routine. The weak fade, the strong grow harder. Children stop crying. They've learned that silence saves energy. Still, the Numantines refuse to surrender. They send messengers at night to nearby tribes, begging for help. None come. Fear of Rome has spread like plague through Iberia. Allies melt away. One night, a young man slips through the Roman lines and reaches Scipio's tent, begging for terms. The general listens without expression. "Tell them," he says, "that Rome demands everything, their arms, their freedom, their lives if necessary." The envoy returns and delivers the message. The council sits in silence. No one speaks of surrender again. The next morning, the last horses are slaughtered for meat. The sound echoes like thunder through the streets. The priests offer prayers to their gods, their voices trembling. Scipio watches the city through his spyglass, seeing smoke from the cooking fires rise thinner each day. "Soon," he says softly, "they'll open the gates." But he underestimates them. The Numantines are not waiting for rescue. They are preparing for the only victory left to them, the kind Rome will never understand. The wind cuts across the plain like a blade. It is early spring now, 133 BCE, and the land around Numantia looks stripped bare. A dead ring of mud, trenches, and ashes. From the Roman camps you can hear the whine of saws and the clang of hammers, but the sound is dull, tired. Even conquest has become monotonous. Inside the city, silence rules. The people move slowly through the narrow streets, their faces hollow, their clothes in tatters. Once they were farmers and traders, now they look like shades of themselves. The siege has lasted months beyond what anyone expected. The stores of grain ran out long ago. Horses, dogs, leather, all gone. What little food remains is hidden away by the old or the cunning. The city's heartbeat has slowed to a whisper, yet the spirit that built Numantia still burns, thin but stubborn. At dawn, a boy climbs the wall to look out over the Roman lines. The view never changes. 7 camps forming an iron halo, their watchfires constant even in daylight. The river glints between them, shackled by dams and fences. He spits into the wind and mutters, "You can't fence the gods." The Romans, meanwhile, have learned patience from Scipio Aemilianus. The general walks the perimeter each morning, wrapped in his heavy cloak, inspecting the walls and ditches. He never raises his voice, never shows triumph. His soldiers respect him and fear him a little. He has forbidden drinking, gambling, or looting. He allows no music, no cheering. War to Scipio is not glory. It's discipline carved into flesh. His officers sometimes ask why he doesn't storm the city. "Because," he says, "they want us to. They want to die fighting. We will give them nothing they want." He has already seen Carthage reduced to dust, its people dragged in chains through the streets of Rome. He knows victory comes not from courage, but from control. Numantia will fall, but not in battle. It will simply vanish under the weight of inevitability. Inside the walls, council meetings grow shorter. There are no decisions left to make. The priest of Lugus, grey-bearded, his robes hanging loose, stands before the people in the square. "The gods do not ask for life," he says. "They ask for honour. And we can still give them that." The crowd murmurs their assent. Even the starving nod. The young men volunteer for night raids, knowing it's suicide. Some never make it to the gates before collapsing from exhaustion. The rest creep into the darkness, more ghost than soldier. They return empty-handed, or not at all. By now, the Romans barely react. When bodies appear near the trenches, Scipio orders them burned. "Smoke rises faster than courage," he says. "Let them see it." And they do. The people of Numantia watch the pyres from the walls. The flames look like distant stars mocking their own dying fires. Mothers tell their children stories to distract them. Tales of the old gods, of heroes who turned to wolves or hawks to escape the Romans. The children listen wide-eyed, but even they know it's just a story. A few try to slip through the siege lines. Most are caught. Scipio has them displayed before the city, alive but silent, a warning without cruelty. He doesn't torture, doesn't gloat. He doesn't have to. His patience is punishment enough. Then comes the spring rain, brief, cold, and useless. The city's cisterns fill, but the fields beyond are barren. Nothing grows. The people drink water that tastes of smoke and rust. Hunger becomes delirium. Fights break out in the streets over crumbs. And still, Scipio waits. He tells his aides, the strongest fortress is pride. Once it breaks, the stones will fall on their own. But Numantia's pride does not break. It only hardens into silence. One afternoon, a group of elders send an envoy under a white flag. He is thin, barefoot, his skin grey from hunger. He asks for peace, not surrender, but terms. Let us live as allies of Rome, he says. We'll give tribute, soldiers, whatever you wish. Just let our children live, Scipio listens, unmoved. Your children, he replies, are already Romans. They just don't know it yet. Then he sends the man back with nothing. When the envoy returns, the council falls silent. Finally, one of the warriors, young, hollow-eyed, still fierce, speaks, then we have only one choice left, to die free, and that becomes the law of the city. That night the smiths relight their forges, not to make weapons, but to destroy them. They melt blades into lumps, bury the iron in the earth. Rome shall take no trophies, they vow. The women gather the city's treasures, ornaments, idols, silver cups, and throw them into the wells. Let the gods drink what's ours, they say. Scipio's spies report the fires and chants from within the walls. He knows what it means. They're choosing their end, he tells his officers. Good. It spares us the work. The final days are quiet. No horns, no raids, no shouts. Only the smell of smoke and the sound of wind moving through empty streets. The city is preparing not to fight, but to disappear. The sun rises pale over Numantia, its light thin and colourless, the kind that makes everything look already dead. The smoke from the Roman camps drifts low across the valley, mixing with the grey mist from the river. You walk the city's main street, or what's left of it, and hear almost nothing. No hammers, no animals, no laughter. The wind moves through the alleys like a voice whispering goodbye. Numantia has become a ghost of itself. The people no longer speak of victory or vengeance. They speak of endings. The old men sit by the gates, wrapped in cloaks that hang loose over their bones. Children lie in their mothers' arms, too weak to cry. The warriors still polish their swords, not for battle, but for ritual. On the walls, a handful of sentries stand watch, though there's nothing left to watch for. The Roman camps stretch in every direction. 7 fortresses of red banners and perfect geometry, their sentinels marching with clockwork precision. Scipio's soldiers no longer look up at the city. They don't need to. The siege is finished in everything but name. Inside his command tent, Scipio Aemilianus sharpens his dagger in silence. His aides avoid his eyes. The general has grown thin, harder, his patience now a weapon as sharp as his blade. He writes reports to the Senate. The Numantines will soon perish. The gods favour Rome. But there's no triumph in his words, only fatigue. Even victory can become a burden. That afternoon, a single figure walks out of the gates. A woman, her hair streaked with grey, her dress torn but clean. She carries nothing but a clay jar. The Romans watch her descend the slope slowly, her bare feet leaving prints in the mud. When she reaches the ditch, she stops and looks up at the lines of soldiers staring down. I am not a messenger, she says in halting Latin, only a witness. Scipio comes forward. She bows her head slightly. You will not break them, she tells him quietly. We are already beyond you. Then she turns and walks back up the hill, disappearing through the gate. Scipio says nothing. He simply watches the walls where the faint glow of fire has begun to appear, not battle fire but ritual fire. He understands. He's seen it before, at Carthage. The beginning of the end. Inside the city, the council gathers for the last time. Avarice, the chief, stands in the centre of the square surrounded by his people. The Romans have taken everything from us, he says, but they will not take our spirit. Tonight we return what is ours, our lives, to the gods. No one argues. They've all known this was coming. The city prepares. Every family lights a fire. Weapons are placed beside hearths, not to fight, but to burn. The priests chant prayers older than Rome itself. Some weep, some smile. The sky darkens, and the smoke rises thicker. Scipio's lookouts report it immediately. They're burning their stores, one says. Then another. Sir, the flames, they're everywhere. The general steps outside and looks through the dusk. The whole hill glows red now, a crown of fire around the walls. The smoke twists upward in great black columns. They've chosen their own pyre, he murmurs. The Romans tighten their lines, unsure whether to advance or wait. Scipio orders no movement. Let them finish, he says. No one enters until the fire dies. Inside the city, the world becomes a furnace. The streets fill with heat and light. Families huddle together, singing the old songs, songs of the earth, of ancestors, of the wind that never bows. The warriors pile their armour in the square, pour oil over it and set it aflame. The metal hisses like an animal dying. Some take their lives by blade, some by fire, some by poison brewed from wild herbs. Mothers hold their children close and whisper, "Better God's arms than Rome's chains." The flames rise higher, licking the sky. The walls crack in the heat. The wooden gates collapse. The air is filled with the roar of fire, but no screams, only the sound of the wind and the collapse of roofs. From the plain, the Roman soldiers watch in silence. Even hardened veterans, men who've seen massacres and plagues, stand frozen. They're burning themselves, one whispers. Scipio says nothing. He watches until the night swallows the hill, the flames flickering like stars dying in reverse. When one of his tribunes finally speaks, "What now, sir?" Scipio's answer is as cold as the moon above them. "We wait for ashes." By dawn, the fire is gone. Only smoke remains, thick and grey, curling like ghosts above the ruins. The smell of burned wood and flesh hangs heavy in the air. Scipio mounts his horse and rides slowly up the hill. No arrows fly, no voices call. The gates are gone, the streets silent. The first Roman to enter Numantia finds a city of corpses, some lying together, others sitting as if asleep. In the square, the last embers flicker beside blackened armour and melted gold. Scipio dismounts and walks through the ruins. He says nothing for a long time. Finally he murmurs, "They defeated us in the only way they could." And perhaps in that moment Rome learned that conquest has limits, that even victory can bow before defiance. The wind sweeps through the empty city, scattering ash across the stones. It sounds like applause. The morning after the fire, the sky above Numantia is grey and still. Not even the ravens dare to circle. You walk through the ruins beside the Roman soldiers, their sandals crunching softly on blackened stones. The air tastes of ash and iron, the smell so thick it clings to your throat. Everything that once lived here, every home, every dream, every heartbeat, has been folded into smoke. Numantia is gone. The Romans move cautiously, as if afraid the dead might rise. They find no survivors, no resistance, no spoils. The city's treasures, its weapons, tools, jewellery, have been melted into shapeless lumps of metal. The wells are full of ash and bone. In the courtyards the hearths are cold, but their stones are blackened from the final fires. It is a city that refused to surrender even to memory. Scipio Aemilianus walks alone through the streets. His officers follow at a distance, whispering. They expect triumph, cheers, proclamations, maybe even a sacrifice to the gods. But Scipio says nothing. He steps over the charred remains of a gate, runs his hand over the soot-streaked walls, and stops in the centre of the square. There, amid the ruin, lies a cracked shield bearing the faded symbol of a sun. He lifts it, turns it once in his hand, and drops it again. "This," he says quietly, "is what happens when men would rather die than bow." His aide, the historian Polybius, yes, that Polybius, scribbles notes in his wax tablet. His words will later echo through centuries. Numantia perished undefeated. For all his victories, Scipio feels none of them here. Carthage had been rich and proud, its destruction brought Rome glory, but Numantia brings only silence. There are no spoils to parade, no captives to sell. He has conquered a memory, and memories don't make good trophies. He orders the bodies buried, not out of mercy, but because the stench makes his men gag. The burial takes 3 days. The soldiers work in grim quiet, their faces grey with soot. Even they, hardened killers of the Republic, feel something strange, unease, maybe even respect. When the last pyres are extinguished, Scipio summons his officers. We raise it, he says, stone by stone. Leave no walls standing. The legionaries obey. They dismantle what remains of Numantia, tearing down the towers, breaking the altars, scattering the stones into the river. When they are done, only a bare hill remains, black earth and silence. Rome will later boast that Numantia was wiped from the face of the earth, but that is never quite true. You can erase a city, not its story. The Senate back in Rome erupts in celebration when the news arrives. Messengers ride through the forum shouting, "Scipio has done it again." Senators toast his name. Statues are promised. Coins will be minted with his face. The Republic congratulates itself on its glory and its gods. But in Hispania, the land stays quiet. The surviving tribes send no ambassadors, no rebellions, only silence. They have seen what happens when you defy Rome, yet in their silence lies something deeper than fear, remembrance. The story of Numantia spreads not through scrolls, but through whispers and songs. Mothers teach their children the names of those who burned. Poets speak of a city that died free. Even among Rome's own soldiers, the tale becomes legend, an example of defiance that commands respect rather than scorn. Scipio leaves Spain soon after. He does not celebrate, does not boast. He rides away with the same calm he brought to the siege, but inside him something has shifted. Some say he told Polybius, "I fear for Rome. When we are no longer challenged, we will forget who we are." The historian doesn't confirm it, but the quote lingers in every retelling. Years later, philosophers will point to Numantia as the moment Rome crossed a line, from a republic of warriors to an empire of executioners. They'll say the spirit of conquest consumed its own soul here, on this lonely hill in Spain, and yet Numantia's death gave birth to something greater than empire, a story too stubborn to die. Long after Scipio's triumph fades, after Rome itself burns, after the legions vanish into history, Spain will still remember. Painters, poets, kings, all will look back to this hill and see not ashes but honour. The Romans called it victory. The Spaniards, centuries later, will call it something else entirely. Numantia, the eternal symbol of freedom against impossible odds. The wind rises again, brushing across the ruins, scattering what little ash remains. It carries no sound but the whisper of endurance. Scipio turns to his men. "We are done here," he says. But he's wrong. Numantia's story has only just begun. Years pass, and the hill of Numantia lies bare. Blackened stones, scattered ashes, silence thick as dust. The Romans have moved on, their camps dismantled, their trenches filled. Grass creeps back across the earth, wildflowers grow where homes once stood, yet even nature seems hesitant to reclaim this place, as if the ground itself remembers too much. You stand where the gates once opened to the plains. There's no sound but wind and the faint rustle of leaves. Somewhere beneath your feet lie the bones of 1,000 men, women and children who chose death over slavery. The Romans thought they buried a city. In truth, they planted a legend. Back in Rome, the Senate builds its monuments. Statues of Scipio Aemilianus rise beside those of his grandfather, the first Scipio Africanus, conqueror of Hannibal. The Republic congratulates itself again. Carthage burned in Africa, Numantia burned in Spain. 2 flames extinguished by one family. Rome declares that order has triumphed over chaos. The poets of the city write verses of glory, though few of them can even point to Numantia on a map. But far from the marble of Rome, in the dusty villages of Hispania, the story spreads like wildfire. A story not of defeat, but of pride. Minstrels sing of the Numantines as heroes who fought gods and empires and chose their own fate. Mothers tell their children, better to die as Numantines than live as Romans. The legend travels through generations, crossing mountains and centuries until it becomes myth. Rome, meanwhile, tightens its grip. The province of Hispania is reorganized under Roman governors, its people taxed, its mines exploited. Roads snake across the land, carrying soldiers and merchants, Latin words and laws. New cities rise, Caesar Augusta, Emerita Augusta, Corduba. But beneath their polished stone, the earth still remembers the smoke. The people adapt, as conquered peoples always do. They learn Latin, wear togas, build amphitheatres. They cheer for Roman games, even as they whisper old prayers in secret. Their gods retreat into the hills and rivers, into the songs sung under breath. The conquerors believe they've erased the past. But every time a soldier walks by a campfire and hears a shepherd hum a sad tune in Celtiberian rhythm he knows, Numantia isn't gone, it's waiting. Scipio himself doesn't live long after his victory. 2 years later, he's found dead in his home. Some say murdered, some say his own heart gave out. Rome buries him with honours, but his legacy is double-edged. He destroyed 2 cities, and in doing so, he made them immortal. Time rolls forward. Rome becomes empire, then memory. Visigoths, Moors, kings, and crusaders all rise and fall across the Iberian Peninsula. Each of them hears the same story whispered through the centuries, a tale of a small city that refused to surrender. By the Middle Ages, Spanish monks write of Numantia as holy defiance, a city that chose heaven rather than Rome. In their manuscripts, the Numantines become almost biblical, warriors of God instead of pagans of the old tribes. Later, during the wars of Christian reconquest, knights marching against the Moors carry banners marked with the name Numantia as a symbol of sacrifice and courage. When Spain itself becomes an empire, ruling the seas and the New World, its poets look back and find in Numantia their own reflection, a proud, tragic people who would rather burn than bow. Cervantes, the soldier who became a writer, will even turn it into a play, The Siege of Numantia, a story that captures Spain's deepest contradiction, the beauty of resistance and the cost of pride. You can almost see him at his desk in the 16th century, ink on his fingers, writing lines that echo through time. The body dies, but the soul of Numantia endures. Centuries later, that line still feels true. The ruins of the city remain, dug up by archaeologists, studied by scholars, visited by dreamers. The stones are black, the foundations shallow, yet when the wind moves through them, it sounds like breath. The ghosts here don't haunt, they whisper. Standing on that hill, you can almost hear the last council, the last cries, the rush of fire devouring everything, and you realise it's not tragedy you're hearing, but triumph. Because Numantia did what few ever have. It forced the conqueror to learn humility. The Romans wrote history in marble and victory. The Numantines wrote theirs in silence and flame, and somehow the flame lasted longer. Today, when Spaniards speak of endurance, they say Numantino, the spirit of those who refuse to yield. The word itself has become a heartbeat across 2,000 years. The Romans thought they erased a city, but instead they named a people, and as the wind moves through the ruins carrying the scent of ash and time, you realise that in some strange way Numantia never fell at all. It simply crossed from life into legend, and legends don't die. The centuries roll on like the Duero River, slow but relentless. Empires rise and crumble, kings crown and fall, and yet the legend of Numantia drifts through every age of Spain like a ghost that refuses to fade. You walk once more through the hilltop ruins, stones cracked and weathered, grass curling between the walls, and realise the silence here isn't emptiness, it's memory, heavy and patient. When the Visigoths arrive in the 5th century CE, they build small churches near the old Roman roads. They know nothing of Celtiberians or Scipio, but the locals still whisper the story of the city that burned rather than bend. The new kings don't erase the tale, they adopt it. It becomes a lesson in virtue, in honour, in dying with dignity. Then come the Moors in 711 CE, and with them, a new chapter of Spain's long rhythm of conquest and resistance. The caliphs of Córdoba build mosques and gardens, bringing philosophy and poetry, but even under their rule, the name Numantia lingers in the mountains, passed from mouth to mouth by Christian monks and Muslim scholars alike. To the Moors it becomes a symbol of fitna, righteous rebellion. To the Christians it's martyrdom, the same fire seen through different eyes. Time reshapes the legend but never breaks it. By the 13th century, when the armies of Castile push south during the Reconquista, soldiers shout Numancia as a battle cry. The priests bless them with stories of ancient freedom fighters who faced empire and chose death over shame. Every new siege feels like an echo of that first one, a mirror of walls, fire, and faith. Then, in the 16th century, Spain becomes the conqueror. Gold flows from the New World, the sun never sets on its empire, and yet in the heart of that vast power, the memory of Numantia stirs uneasily. The playwright Miguel de Cervantes, a veteran of war, a man who knew captivity, sits by candlelight and writes La Numancia, a tragedy that turns the ashes of the Celtiberians into poetry. In his play, the city becomes Spain itself, proud, wounded, unbreakable. The Romans are no longer just conquerors. They are every empire that tries to crush the human spirit. The Numantines are every people who ever refused to yield. They die, Cervantes writes, but not defeated. Audiences weep. They see themselves. The same stubborn courage, the same melancholy pride. Spain, though mighty, begins to recognize in Numantia the cost of its own conquests. The story has come full circle. As centuries turn again, the legend changes once more. When Spain loses its colonies in the 19th century, when revolutions shatter thrones and ideals, poets and patriots return to the old hill. They see in Numantia a mirror for their own grief, the symbol of a nation that has bled, survived, and kept its dignity. Romantic painters climb the plateau to sketch the ruins bathed in sunset. They imagine the last women of Numantia standing amid flames, hair loose, eyes defiant, holding torches that light both death and freedom. Nationalists make pilgrimages here, speaking of Numantine resistance as the soul of Spain, the will to endure, even in defeat. During the Spanish Civil War, both sides claim the name. Franco's soldiers shout it as a slogan of endurance. The Republicans invoke it as defiance against tyranny. The irony would make the old Numantines laugh, both conquerors and rebels drawing courage from the same ashes, and through it all the ruins stay silent. The stones don't take sides. They've seen enough blood to know that history never stops hungering. But if you listen closely, past the speeches, past the pride, you can still hear the deeper message. Freedom is never won by victory alone. Sometimes it's won by how you face defeat. Modern Spain has changed. Trains run past the Duero, highways cut through old Roman roads, and schoolchildren visit the archaeological site with notebooks and cameras. The guide points to the burned earth and says, "Here stood the walls of Numantia." Some yawn, some look bored, but a few stare into the wind with a strange stillness in their eyes. Maybe they feel it, the echo of something old, fierce, and terribly human. Because the truth is, the story of Numantia isn't about Rome anymore. It never really was. It's about what people do when cornered, when stripped of everything but choice. It's about that final decision between living as a slave or dying as yourself. And that question, that eternal whisper, will never fade as long as there are those who resist. The sun begins to set behind the Sierra de la Demanda, washing the hill in red light, the same colour it must have glowed the night the flames rose to heaven. The air is quiet now, but not empty. The wind moves softly through the ruins, and if you close your eyes, you might still hear the murmur of fire, the ring of iron, the heartbeat of a city that never surrendered. Rome is gone. The empire that claimed the world is dust, but the ashes of Numantia still breathe. The modern sun spills over Numantia's hill, not with fire this time, but with the slow, forgiving light of morning. You walk the site as it is now, quiet, peaceful, almost tender. Stone foundations mark where homes once stood. The air smells faintly of thyme and dry grass. Somewhere nearby, a shepherd's bell rings, its echo soft against the wide sky. The Duero still flows, calm and eternal, looping around the same land that once bled for freedom. Archaeologists began digging here in the 19th century, searching for bones and pottery. But what they found was something deeper, the outline of a story that refused to stay buried. Each wall they uncovered told of precision, straight streets, storage pits, blackened hearths. Every fragment spoke of order amid chaos, of people who faced the unimaginable and met it with quiet discipline. Even the ashes seemed arranged, as if the final flames had been deliberate. Not panic, but purpose. The scientists catalogued artifacts, poets gave them meaning. When Spanish nationalism surged in the early 20th century, Numantia became a shrine, a place where teachers brought schoolchildren to learn that their ancestors had chosen freedom over empire. Politicians stood on this hill and gave speeches about strength, sacrifice, and destiny. But for those who came in silence, without flags or slogans, the ruins spoke more softly. This is what it means to be human. You can almost hear them, the murmurs of long-dead voices rising with the wind. We were small, we were hungry, but we were free. For modern visitors, it's easy to romanticize. The stone walls are low now, the gates reconstructed with care. Information plaques describe the siege in calm academic language. The ghosts are polite these days, staying mostly in the corners of your imagination. But sometimes when the sun sets and the tourists are gone, the light turns red again. The grass moves like smoke. And for a heartbeat the centuries collapse, and you feel them still here, those men and women of Numantia, standing proud beneath a sky they refuse to surrender. In the nearby town of Soria, the legend remains part of daily life. Cafes serve wine named Numantino. A local football team bears the city's name. Children grow up hearing that to be Numantino means to endure, to resist, to never yield. It's a strange afterlife, from ashes to brand identity, but maybe that's fitting. Even in its ruins, Numantia lives on as both symbol and story, both tragedy and triumph. Scholars still debate the exact details, how many people lived here, how long the siege lasted, whether the mass suicide truly happened or was embroidered by Roman writers. But the facts matter less than the feeling. The legend has done what history could not. It turned defeat into immortality. Rome, for all its legions and laws, could not conquer that. The empire that stretched from Britain to Egypt is gone, its monuments crumbling, its emperors dust. But the memory of a single hilltop city, nameless to most of its conquerors, still glows like an ember in the Spanish heart. Sometimes schoolchildren on field trips ask their teachers, why didn't they just surrender? The teacher pauses, smiles a little and answers, because they were Numantines. It's not logic, it's identity. You sit on one of the ruined walls and feel the sun warm the stones. It's hard not to imagine the last day, the fire rising, the chants, the wind carrying the smoke across this same horizon. They must have known Rome would win in the end. They must have felt fear. But courage, perhaps, is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to act in spite of it. Numantia's story belongs not to conquerors or historians, but to anyone who's ever stood against something bigger than themselves and said, no. The river glimmers in the distance. The air hums with the faint sound of bees. Life has returned to this place, but it doesn't erase the past, it grows from it. The guide at the entrance calls out that closing time is near. You take one last look around, the stones, the hills, the vast, endless sky, and realize that for all its fire and grief, Numantia didn't fall. It transformed. The Romans thought they ended a rebellion. What they actually did was light a torch that never went out. And here, on this quiet Spanish hill, 2,000 years later, the light still burns. The light of evening slides down the slopes of the hill like a slow tide. The city that once defied an empire is now only lines of stone and air, but even that is enough to stir something deep in you. The wind moves across the ruins as if turning invisible pages. Each wall, each fragment still tells a story. Down below, the Duero River winds like a silver thread through the plain. The same river that once carried Rome's reflections in its water, now carrying clouds instead. The landscape hasn't forgotten. It has simply forgiven. And in that forgiveness, Numantia feels more alive than ever. If you look closely, you can still trace the plan of the streets. They run straight, almost Roman in their precision, as if even rebellion knew order here. The homes were small, each with a hearth at the centre, each one built from rough stones stacked without mortar, strong enough to endure centuries of wind. In one corner of the ruins, archaeologists found charred wheat seeds, still black after 2 millennia. Beside them, fragments of clay bowls cracked from heat. The city's last meal, frozen in time. Standing there, it's impossible not to wonder what went through their minds in those final moments. The mothers, the soldiers, the elders who chose fire over chains. Did they fear? Did they pray? Or did they simply look at each other and know they had become something larger than life, a people bound by the refusal to kneel? Rome, for all its might, never understood that. To the Romans, victory meant obedience. To the Numantines, victory meant choice. And in that simple difference lay the eternal heartbeat of defiance. Centuries later, philosophers would call it moral victory. Poets would call it the fire of the soul. But the Numantines never called it anything. They just lived it, and died with it. As the years rolled forward, Spain absorbed that spirit like the stones absorbed the sun. You can trace it through every age. In the soldiers of the Reconquista, in the poets of the Golden Age, in the guerrillas who fought Napoleon's armies, even in the students and workers who resisted dictatorships. The same pulse, the same echo. Numantia. And yet the story's beauty lies not only in resistance but in humility. The city never sought conquest, glory, or empire. It sought only to live freely. Its fall reminds you that power is temporary, but dignity, that quiet human dignity, endures beyond empires. In the 20th century, when Spain struggled to define itself through chaos and change, Numantia became both mirror and guide. Playwrights revived Cervantes' tragedy. Schools taught its legend. Soldiers, revolutionaries, and dreamers alike invoked it. The city that once burned to avoid being conquered became the symbol of a nation learning to rebuild itself after centuries of division. Today, historians and poets walk side by side through the ruins. Some bring notebooks, others just silence. Tourists come with cameras and water bottles, but a few linger longer, sitting on the same stones where the last council might have stood, letting the wind speak for them. The sound it makes isn't mournful, it's steady, almost proud. When you close your eyes, the line between past and present fades. You can almost hear the heartbeat of the siege, the clang of Roman hammers, the whisper of Celtiberian prayers, the rush of fire. And under it all, a deeper rhythm, the sound of people choosing their own ending. That, perhaps, is why Numantia endures when Rome does not. Empires tell the story of domination. Numantia tells the story of will. You rise and look toward the horizon. The hills beyond are soft and golden, the air shimmering in the heat. Somewhere out there, the boundaries of the old Roman world once ended, and yet here, in this small forgotten corner, something greater than empire survived. The world will always have its conquerors, its Scipios, its empires. But every so often, there will also be a Numantia, a small place, a stubborn people standing against the tide. And the strange, beautiful truth is that it's the Numantines we remember. Night settles over the ruins, a soft blue veil stretched across the plateau. The stars return, the same ones that watched Numantia burn, and the same ones that watched Rome crumble. The wind rises again, brushing through the grass with a sigh that sounds almost human. You sit among the stones, the silence pressing close, not empty but full of memory. It's strange how quiet places hold so much noise from the past. If you listen long enough, you can almost hear the rhythm of life that once filled these walls, the chatter of markets, the clang of metalwork, the laughter of children chasing dogs down narrow lanes. The siege ended centuries ago, but the heartbeat lingers. The city still breathes in its way. Numantia has become more than an archaeological site. It's a mirror, and Spain keeps looking into it. Every era finds a new reflection there. To the medieval monks it was martyrdom. To Cervantes it was tragedy and rebirth. To the poets of modern Spain It became endurance, that stubborn, beautiful refusal to vanish. Even to this day, politicians quote its name when they speak of crisis or courage. The word Numantino has come to mean unbreakable. The Roman chroniclers never could have imagined this. They wrote of the siege as an example of imperial efficiency, how Scipio Aemilianus disciplined his legions and ended rebellion with precision. Yet, the pages of Livy and Appian read differently now, their cold descriptions turned into quiet confessions. The victor's triumph became a monument to those they crushed. And perhaps that's the true victory of Numantia, that its defeat survived longer than Rome's glory. There's something profoundly human in that reversal. Empires fall because they forget humility. Small nations endure because they remember pain. Rome taught the world about law, order, and empire. Numantia taught it about freedom, sacrifice, and the limits of conquest. Modern archaeologists have unearthed over 40 dwellings here, each one simple, square, and sturdy. You can still trace the outlines of ovens and grain stores, the small courtyards where families gathered. In the centre, the main square, the place where, perhaps, the final decision was made. When you stand there today, you feel it, the quiet gravity of a people who faced extinction with clarity. At the visitor centre, there's a plaque with a line from Cervantes' play. "The flames of Numantia illuminate the world." It sounds poetic, but it's also literal. From this hill 2,000 years ago, that fire rose so high it was seen for miles. Travellers described the sky glowing red for nights afterward. The message wasn't for Scipio. It was for time itself, and time answered. The city's destruction, meant to erase it, became its preservation. Its ashes hardened into legend, its name into symbol. Even now, children visit and draw the hill with crayons, a circle of red, a few grey walls, smoke rising toward the stars. They don't understand all the history, but they understand something instinctive, that here, once, people said no to the impossible and meant it. The night deepens, the wind cools, the moon climbs high above the ruins, turning the stones silver. Somewhere nearby, a fox moves silently through the grass. The world has changed beyond recognition, yet this place feels untouched by time. You realize, standing there, that Numantia isn't only about defiance, it's also about peace. The peace that comes after you've given everything and have nothing left to fear is not the peace of victory or surrender, but the peace of being understood by history. Perhaps that's why so many who visit leave quietly, without selfies or fanfare. They sense it, that the hill doesn't want worship, it wants remembrance. You run your fingers along a piece of scorched stone, smooth and cold. For a second it feels like a pulse, and maybe that's the final secret of Numantia, that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just endures, quietly, endlessly, waiting for the next traveller to listen. Morning breaks again over the high plains of Soria, the kind of still, endless light that seems to carry centuries in its glow. You stand among the stones of Numantia as the sun climbs slowly, gilding every wall, every scar, every silent fragment of history. There is no sound but the breeze sweeping through dry grass and the faint hum of insects waking to the day. The siege is over, the fire long gone, and yet somehow the hill still burns quietly in memory. A local guide passes by, leading a small group of visitors. He gestures toward the blackened rocks and says softly, "This is where they made their choice." You watch as the group falls silent, the words heavier than they expect. Even those who came just to take pictures seem to sense it, that invisible gravity of place. Numantia doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't need to. For centuries, the Romans claimed they conquered the world through reason and law. But reason can't understand a city like this. Logic says surrender, live, rebuild. Faith says fight, hope, endure. But what the Numantines did was neither logic nor faith. It was something rarer, conviction without compromise. They believed freedom was worth more than life, and somehow 2,000 years later we're still talking about it. That's the strange immortality of defiance. The empire that destroyed Numantia no longer exists. Its language evolved, its gods faded, its marble cracked. but the echo of one city's refusal, that remains. It lingers in poems, in plays, in the way the Spanish language itself carries the word Numantino like a badge of honour. Even Spain's own empires, centuries later, would face their collapses with Numantia in their blood. When ships burned in distant seas, when soldiers fought impossible wars, when revolution swept across the Americas, every Spaniard who whispered "we will not yield" was, in spirit, a Numantine. The city that died in 133 BCE became a seed scattered through time, reborn in every act of endurance. There's a paradox to that, of course. Rome, in its conquest, preserved what it sought to destroy. Without Scipio's siege, there would be no legend. Without Rome's cruelty, no symbol. History is strange like that. It turns violence into myth, ashes into scripture. The fire that consumed Numantia ended a city but kindled an idea. You walk toward the edge of the plateau. From up here you can see the full sweep of the land, wide, open, untamed. No cities, no walls, just hills fading into the horizon. It's easy to understand why they loved it, why they fought for it. To the Romans, this was wilderness. To the Numantiners, it was home. That difference is what filled the sky with fire. At your feet lies a small plaque engraved with a line by Antonio Machado, a poet from this very province. En Numancia, el alma española se hizo llama. In Numantia, the Spanish soul became flame. Machado wrote it during another dark time, when Spain tore itself apart in civil war. Even then, the old hill was a compass. To one side, tyranny, to the other, despair. But at the centre, always, resistance. The same fire, the same choice. You sit on a stone that was once part of a wall, and imagine Scipio himself standing here, the greatest general of his age, surrounded by the ghosts of victory. What would he think if he could see this now? That the empire that worshipped him has vanished, but the city he crushed still speaks, that the hill he erased has become a shrine. Perhaps he would understand. Perhaps that was his fear all along, that the will of the conquered outlives the pride of the conqueror. The wind rises again, carrying the scent of wildflowers and dust. A hawk circles above, tracing slow, patient arcs. The same sky, the same wind, the same earth. Everything has changed, and nothing has. You realize then that Numantia isn't about the past. It's about the question it leaves behind. When everything is taken from you, what remains that's truly yours? The Romans answered with empire. The Numantines answered with flame. And maybe that's why the story endures, because every generation faces that same choice in its own way. You look out one last time across the valley. The light has shifted, turning the stones golden, the air warm and soft. In that quiet, the city no longer feels ruined. It feels eternal. The hill exhales. The world listens, and the legend continues to burn. Steady, unseen, and alive. Evening drapes itself over Numantia again, calm and luminous. The sun sinks low beyond the ridge, washing the sky in gold and violet. You sit amid the stones and the shadows grow long, each one a vein of the past stretching across the present. The ruins glow softly in the fading light, neither sad nor triumphant, just eternal. The air cools, but it carries warmth from the day, and for a moment you understand what people mean when they say this hill is alive. The stones hold memory the way wood holds fire, faintly, persistently, forever. Every breeze that crosses this plateau has brushed the same grass that once fed horses, has moved through the same streets where a people made their last stand. You imagine the Romans leaving, marching away in their armour, their sandals crunching over ash, their banners fluttering in the wind. They thought the silence behind them meant victory, but silence is deceptive. Sometimes it's the pause before a story begins to echo. Numantia's echo spread quietly at first, a hum through the centuries, then louder. When Spain forged itself from kingdoms and crusades, when its explorers crossed oceans, when it faced defeat, dictatorship and rebirth, the word Numantia always returned. Like a reminder written in flame, remember who you are. The irony is exquisite. Rome, master of history, left its mark in marble and scrolls. Numantia, erased from the map, survived in spirit. One was built to last and faded. The other was destroyed and endured. That's the paradox at the heart of every empire. Conquest is temporary, but courage is permanent. You look out over the valley. The fields ripple in the twilight, golden and infinite. The Duero glints like a blade sheathed in light. Villages dot the horizon, peaceful and small. Somewhere, the people of Soria are cooking dinner, playing guitar, living the lives their ancestors never got to finish. The land they walk upon was paid for with that ancient fire. The legend has softened now. No one comes here seeking vengeance or pride. They come seeking meaning. Soldiers, students, pilgrims, all of them stand where the gates once stood and feel the same strange calm. It's not sadness, it's reverence. A tour group passes by, their guide's voice low in the evening wind. Rome won the battle, he says, but Numantia won the story. Everyone falls silent. It's true, and everyone can feel it. That's the real legacy, not the ashes or the bones, but the way the world remembers. Every civilization leaves behind something, a ruin, a word, a dream. Numantia left behind a question, still unanswered after 2,000 years. What is freedom worth? For some, it's comfort, security, life itself. For the Numantines, it was everything else. They didn't choose death because they loved dying. They chose it because they couldn't bear the thought of living without dignity. That kind of conviction is rare, it's terrifying, and it's beautiful. The first stars begin to appear above the horizon, faint pinpricks in the deepening blue. You think about how many generations have looked up at this same sky. Romans, Celtiberians, monks, farmers, tourists, all of them searching for their place beneath it. The stars never answered, but maybe they didn't have to. The answer is already written in the ground beneath your feet. Rome fell, empires burned, languages changed, but the spirit of Numantia, that quiet, impossible defiance, became part of something larger than history. It became human instinct. Every act of courage, every refusal to yield carries a spark of that same fire. A breeze moves through the ruins again, gentle and cool, and you swear it sounds almost like applause. The world turning, the wind whispering, the past and the present meeting for a moment in the fading light. The city is gone, yes, but the flame is not. It still burns in the hearts of those who remember that freedom, once chosen, can never truly be conquered. The sky over Numantia turns from gold to indigo, and the first chill of night drifts across the plateau. The stones begin to cool, giving up the last of their warmth to the wind. The world seems to hold its breath. You can almost feel the weight of time pressing gently against you. Not heavy, but vast. It's hard to believe that this quiet hill once roared with fire and steel, that where you sit now, 2,000 years ago, warriors screamed their last prayers, mothers clutched their children, and an empire watched the birth of a legend. The calm that lies over it now feels like a benediction, as though history itself has forgiven the pain that made it. Below, the lights of modern Soria flicker faintly. Yellow points in the darkness like watchfires reborn. The people there go about their lives, unaware that every breath they take is drawn from air that once shimmered with smoke and defiance. The world moves on, but the soul of this place refuses to fade. Historians argue over facts, how many died, how long the siege lasted, whether Scipio admired or despised his enemies, but such questions miss the point. Numantia was never just a city. It was a moment, a single, blinding moment when ordinary people stood before power and said, "Enough," and the echo of that word has outlasted the empire that silenced them. As night deepens, you can see the Milky Way stretching above the ruins like a pale scar. The same stars that guided the Roman legions home now shine over an empty city that outlived them. You realize something quietly profound. Rome conquered the world, but Numantia conquered time. It's not that the Numantines defeated the legions. They defeated the idea that force could erase identity. They proved that you can lose everything and still win something greater. Your story. That's what draws people here after millennia. The sense that courage leaves a scent, a resonance, that even the wind remembers. Somewhere beyond the hills, the Duero whispers, winding its eternal path through the plains. It has seen everything, tribes and empires, fire and silence. Yet its water still flows clean, reflecting the same stars. It's as if nature itself chose not to take sides, only to endure. That, perhaps, is the last lesson of Numantia. Endurance is not resistance forever, it's transformation. The city burned and became legend. The people died and became symbols. Even Rome in the end became memory. Everything changes form, but nothing truly vanishes. You walk slowly through the ruins one last time. The moonlight paints the walls silver. Shadows stretch long across the ancient stones. You reach the old gate, or where it once stood, and turn for a final look. The hill glows faintly under the stars, not with fire now, but with peace. There's a strange comfort in it. Maybe we all build our own Numantia at some point, a place within us that we defend against surrender, that burns rather than breaks. And maybe that's what keeps the world human, no matter how many empires rise or fall. You exhale. The night is cool, the air tastes faintly of dust and time. Somewhere in the distance a dog barks, a reminder that life always finds a way to reclaim the ground that history leaves behind. If you listen closely, the wind seems to whisper words in no language at all. Something like gratitude, something like farewell. Rome built monuments of marble and lost them to time. Numantia built a monument of spirit, and it still stands. And as you walk down from the hill, the stars overhead seem to flicker brighter, as if the city's last fire is still burning among them. The night stretches wide and infinite over Numantia, and the silence feels alive. You pause halfway down the slope, looking back toward the crest of the hill. Under the pale wash of moonlight, the ruins gleam faintly, a constellation carved into stone. The walls are low, the streets gone, but the shape remains like bones refusing to lie still. You close your eyes, and for a moment the sentries peel away. You can almost hear the city breathing again. The murmur of voices, the clang of metal, the soft rhythm of footsteps in the dust. The fires return, not as destruction, but as memory. You see the figures in the glow, tired, proud, human, and realize they're not ghosts. They're echoes of every soul who ever stood their ground and refused to yield. It's been more than 2,000 years since that final night. Empires have risen and fallen, kings have come and gone, and the map of the world has rewritten itself 1,000 times. But the hill remains, and so does the lesson written in its ashes. Freedom isn't a gift you're given, it's a fire you choose to keep burning even when it consumes you. Down below, the lights of modern Spain shimmer faintly. Cars moving along the road, the quiet hum of a world that rarely remembers the ground it stands on. Yet here, the past doesn't sleep. It whispers. It teaches. You walk among the stones again, slower this time, as if afraid to disturb them. The air is cool, scented with sage and soil. Every gust of wind sounds like breath. Every shadow feels like presence. History, you realize, isn't just in the books. It's under your feet, waiting for someone to listen. At the top of the hill, the altar stone, the one where the Numantines are said to have gathered before the end, catches the moonlight. It glows faintly, as if the fire never truly left it. You reach out and touch it, feeling the roughness beneath your hand. The stone is cold, but the idea it carries is still warm, that dignity can outlast death, and memory can defeat empire. The Romans tried to erase this city. Time tried to bury it, and yet here it is, quiet, eternal, untamed. You whisper into the night, half to yourself, half to them. You did not lose, because they didn't. The Numantines weren't defeated, they were transformed. Their bodies turned to ash, their homes to ruin, but their defiance became immortal. It seeded itself in the soil, in the songs, in the stubborn will of every people who have ever said no to power. The wind answers softly, sweeping over the stones. It sounds like a voice, old, tired, but proud. It carries the same message across centuries to anyone who dares to listen. No empire lasts forever. No fire truly dies. You look up. The stars above the hill are cold, bright, endless. the same stars that watch Scipio's legions, the same that watch the city burn, the same that will shine long after our own empires fade. Somewhere among them perhaps the spirits of Numantia watch too, not in anger, but in peace. The world will keep turning. Armies will march, cities will rise, names will be forgotten, but the story of Numantia, the quiet, fierce promise of a people who chose freedom over fear, will remain as steady as the constellations. You take one last breath of the cool night air, heavy with history, and begin your walk down the slope. Behind you, the hill glows faintly under the stars. The wind hums low and steady, like a lullaby from a city that refused to die. And somewhere in that whisper, in the rustle of grass, in the flicker of moonlight on stone, you can still hear them say, "We are still here. The night has fallen still." The world around Numantia fades into quiet, the stars hanging low above the hill like lanterns of memory. The air is cool and light, the grass bending softly in the breeze. You can almost feel the pulse of the earth beneath your feet, slow, steady, eternal. This place, once a battlefield, has become a heartbeat. The ashes that once smothered life now cradle peace. The wind that carried war cries now carries lullabies. The same moon that watched the city burn now blesses its sleep. You walk a few more steps, and the silence grows deeper, softer. It's the kind of quiet that doesn't ask to be broken. It asks to be felt. Every breath, every sound, every shimmer of starlight feels like part of a truth too simple for words. That what we honour is never lost. Numantia is gone, but its flame endures, not in ruins or relics, but in the small, stubborn will to be free. The Romans left roads and laws, the Numantines left courage, and between the two, the world learned balance. You close your eyes. The air smells faintly of stone and rain. The wind brushes your hair like a whisper from the past. Sleep now, traveller. The siege is over. The fire has cooled. The city rests. The earth keeps its promise, that every story ends in stillness, every struggle fades into light. And as you drift toward that stillness, the hill of Numantia remains, a soft glow beneath the stars, an ember that never dies. Good night. Sweet dreams.